So I turn now to heat-treated Prophylact, the trade name of which was Prophylact HT. This was a product that was heated for 20 hours at 60 degrees centigrade, and it was heated in a suspension with N-heptane. It may be helpful just to bring up MHRA 00388_029. Please, Shumik, page 16. This is from the UK product license, but it describes the process by which the product is produced, and it helps to show the difference between this product and some of the other heat-treated products that were on the market at the time. We can see that it starts off with cryoprecipitate, which is clarified by filtration. Then there is mixed filtration with polyethylene glycol, centrifuged again, and then centrifuged with polyethylene glycol to make a final concentrate. It's then suspended in a different solution and filtrated and lyophilized. So at that stage, it's dry heated and turned into a powder. Now, for dry heated product, that powder form was then placed in a vial and then was heated either in ovens for a pure dry heat treatment, or in the case of immuno, the vial was heated with vapor, as we have seen in our previous presentations. So the product is still in the vial and it's being heated that way. But with Prophylact, the lyophilized powder was then suspended in heptane. So it is mixed with heptane, not fully dissolved, but mixed with it. And then it was heated at not less than 60 degrees centigrade for not less than 20 hours. It was then filtrated out of the suspension, dried again, freeze-dried, and that creates the final product.
So this isn't dry heating. It isn't pasteurization as is conventionally understood. It's a sort of in-between in which a solvent other than a solvent is used and heat applied.
Yes, it's usually referred to as heating in suspension.
Yes.
In some of the documents, it's rather unflatteringly referred to as slurry heating, to give the idea that the solid is still there. But it is, as you say, so between dry heat and between what is conventionally called pasteurization, which is fully heated within a solution. The only product that I'm aware of that underwent true pasteurization of this form was the Behringwerk product, but that was not, as of 1983, 1984, and 1985, available in the UK. It became available later.
Yes. I mean, it had been available earlier, but it obviously wasn't actually distributed.
I'm afraid so.
That's a detail we can deal with later.
Yes. But it is a significantly different process to the pure dry heat that we have seen with other products. David Bell, in his statement dated the 2nd of February 2021, gives some evidence about the background to this. If we could have on screen, please, Shumik, WITN 4514001, page 6, please. And if we could highlight the last two paragraphs of that page, starting in early 1982. Mr. Bell said this: in early 1982, Alpha began an additional program to inactivate any residual hepatitis virus through heat, which culminated in a licensed product in February 1984. I pause there, sir, to note that references to an FDA license in February 1984. After evaluating various inactivation processes, researchers at Alpha concluded that heating the concentrate in a liquid solvent without added stabilizers might not have the undesirable effect of stabilizing any residual virus in addition to the factor VIII protein. Unlike other entities who utilized dry heat, Alpha developed a procedure using wet heat, a suspension in N-heptane. While this procedure reduced the final yield of factor VIII and was costlier to implement, It provided, in Alpha's opinion, a more robust inactivation of viruses. A simple analogy is dry heat is similar to placing your hand in an oven. Wet heat is like placing your hand in a hot water bath. The transmission of heat in the bath is much greater. Alpha's protocol for this additional processing step was established in the fall of 1982 and submitted to the FDA. Studies conducted pursuant to FDA licensure demonstrated that Alpha's heat treatment process inactivated significant quantities of marker virus, hepatitis B and non-A, non-B hepatitis. However, both the Bureau of Biologics of the FDA and the haemophilia treatment community raised concerns about the possibility of neoantigenicity related to the heat treatment. This concern centered around researchers' and physicians' belief that heating the concentrate altered the molecular structure of the factor VIII molecule, which could have a deleterious effect on persons using heat-treated concentrates, essentially making a treatable patient untreatable. On to the next page. Studies conducted by Alpha failed to show any evidence of neoantigenicity. However, the treatment community did not fully accept these results until the end of 1985. Until haemophilia treaters' concerns about neoantigenicity were allayed, non-heat-treated concentrates continued to be prescribed and recommended by physicians as the principal treatment of choice. That concerns primarily the American position, and we'll come on to see the UK position. If I may take you to page 3 of the same document, in response to some questions by the inquiry, and in a statement dated the 6th of July 2021, Mr. Bell provided a little more detail. He said, and I quote, "Alpha began its research program for factor concentrates prior to the initial reports of HIV. The program was in response to the potential risks of hepatitis and was undertaken by senior Alpha scientists, including Martha Hayinsky and Charles Heidebrand. Prior to the work initiated by Alpha and others in the late 1970s/early 1980s in response to the risk of hepatitis, the scientific and clinical understanding was that, while heat treatment/pasteurization was utilized for viral inactivation in albumin, it required the addition of specific stabilizers. As it related to heat-treating factor concentrates, it was believed that the factor concentrates were very heat-labile, and even in the presence of stabilizers, heat would denature the proteins, creating neoantigens and rendering a patient untreatable. Even today, the creation of neoantigens, inhibitors, is one of the largest problems facing patients being treated for bleeding disorders. My current recollection is that this information was based upon scientific and clinical evidence as conducted by Charles Heidebrand in the laboratory of Ed Davis at the University of Washington in the late 1970s, where it was found that factor VIII was denatured by heat even in the presence of stabilizers, and by clinical information provided by leading clinicians treating haemophilia, including Louis Aladort, who, along with recognition as one of the leading treaters of haemophilia, was also the medical director of the National Haemophilia Foundation. We will, of course, come back to issues about heat treatment in due course. In the UK, we've heard from Dr. Mark Winter of the Kent Haemophilia Centre, who explained that after Alpha obtained their FDA license, which was in February 1984, he and others approached the company to request the material on a named patient basis. The reference to that is INQY 14059. It's pages 136 to 40 of his oral evidence to this inquiry on the 1st of October last year. Dr. Winter's evidence is that all of his centre's patients were transferred to heat-treated factor VIII or factor IX on a named patient basis in May to June 1984. And he also thought that similar changes were made at Middlesex, Sheffield, and at St Thomas's But that, of course, is his evidence about what went on there rather than direct evidence. An indication of the move towards heat-treated products, and in particular Prophylact, in 1984, is available in an article from the Haemophilia Society Update from 1989. Could we have HCDO 40276_047, please? This is an article marking a decade of service to haemophilia from Alpha Therapeutic UK, so the UK company. If we go to the second paragraph down, the entirety of that left-hand column, this is what the article, which dates from the 3rd of June 1989, says, and I quote, "Alpha was established in 1979 under the direction of Ian Marshall, and the firm enjoyed several years of steady growth in the early 1980s. This, of course, is the UK firm, sir. The advent of heat-treated concentrates in 1984 to 1985 to combat the threat of hepatitis and AIDS was to change the company's fortunes dramatically. Following the urgent licensing of several heat-treated products in early 1985, Prophylact was rapidly established as the market leader in the commercial sector due to its unique method of viral inactivation. Fortunately for Alpha, the summer of 1984 had seen Barry Barber join the company, and Alpha was able to cope with the very rapid expansion of business that coincided with the new treatment era. Ian, that's Ian Marshall, recalls, quote, "The situation at Christmas 1984 was chaotic. Everyone wanted to exchange their non-heated Factor 8 for the heat-treated product, which had only been used here for the first time a few months before. Barry and I seemed to spend all our time either on the telephone to the USA or in a van on the M11, driving around exchanging hospital stocks as much as possible. One local taxi firm was delighted, though. We booked their fleet of cars and vans for last-minute deliveries on Christmas Eve." That's the end of that quotation. Back to the article. In early 1988, following the decision of several major US manufacturers to stop production of dry-heated concentrates, Alpha was being called on to supply 2/3 of all the Factor 8 being used in the UK. At a time when the world, and in particular the USA, was very short of Factor 8, securing enough supplies to prevent shortage was very difficult. Back to another quote from Mr. Marshall. "We had to introduce rationing." Sorry, not Mr. Marshall, it's Barry Barber. "We had to introduce rationing," says Barry, to have simply sold all our supplies to the first hospitals to ring up would have been very easy and just as profitable for us. However, that would have meant some hospitals receiving no product at all, and treatment programs would have been severely curtailed. We adopted a very responsible attitude, which on the whole ensured everyone got to maintain a service, and I know from the reaction of centre directors that we did the right thing." Pausing there, sir, to note that the suggestion that Prophylact HT was 2/3 of all Factor 8s being used in the UK as of 1988 may be misplaced. It may have been intended to mean, or a misstatement of the fact that approximately 2/3 or around that figure of the commercial market may have been Prophylact. But at that time, NHS Factor 8 from both PFC and BPL would have been widely used as well. As we have heard from previous presentations, the DHSS, as of November 1984, encouraged other companies to apply for product licenses for heat-treated products, and Alpha Therapeutics UK did so on the 3rd of January 1985. We've looked at the manufacturing process from that application. The references are MHRA 00333388_033 and the same stem _029. The application was signed by Ian Marshall. and the applicant was Alpha Therapeutics UK, so the UK company rather than the German company. The application documented that the product was licensed by that stage in both America and West Germany. A warning was contained in the application. I won't take you to it, sir, but I will just read it now. It's at page 6 of the same document that we looked at earlier. Viral hepatitis may be transmitted by this product. Patients with mild deficiencies who consequently have not received multiple transfusion of blood or blood products are at greater risk. In this situation, the benefits of antihemophilic factor Prophylact, heat-treated, must be carefully weighed against the risk of viral hepatitis. Single donor products should be preferentially utilised whenever feasible. So a similar warning to the unheat-treated product, sir. We will come back to some of the subsequent warnings in due course. Following the provision of the application, there was a process of correspondence between the DHSS and Alpha Therapeutics UK. I don't think I need to take you to the detail of that. I would note that at one point the DHSS requested or required Alpha to include in its literature the fact that the product had been heated at 60 degrees centigrade for 20 hours, and it also said that it should be specified that that step had been taken, and I quote, in order to reduce the risk of transmission of infectious agents. So, as we have seen with other products, not referring to hepatitis or AIDS, but infectious agents generally. The reference is MHRA 00333388_018. There is some further discussion between the company and the DHSS about the precise terms of any warnings, but I don't think I need to take you to that. As with other applications for heat-treated products, Dr. Duncan Thomas was consulted by Dr. Mary Duncan, and his letter of the 17th of January 1985, we could have this on the screen please, is MHRA 00333388_026. You will recall, sir, that Dr. Thomas's letter about cryobilin, coate and hemophil, dated the 8th of January 1985, formed part of our presentation on cryobilin. This is a letter from 9 days later, specifically about Prophylact. What Dr. Thomas said was this: thank you for your letter of January the 16th, accompanying the copy of the abridged application for a heat-treated product from Alpha Therapeutics. I think the submission indicates that the company has made a serious attempt to reduce the infectivity of their product. As you noted in your letter, they have used 4 marker viruses, including HDLV3, and have shown that their heat treatment step inactivated at least down to the current level of detection of this virus. I cannot see what else we can expect them to do. Their treatment of factor 8 is, of course, different from that of the other manufacturers, and, as far as I know, they are the only one that is treating the material with heptane, followed by heating. As you know, the main worry about these heat-treated products is whether evidence will emerge from long-term studies of the formation of neoantigens, and particularly antibodies to factor 8. I think the immunologists might claim that, on theoretical grounds, one might expect evidence of neoantigens to develop eventually. All one can say, however, is that nobody has yet demonstrated their presence, and that, in some 18 months of use in other countries, the problem does not seem to have developed in patients. I suppose it is reasonable to swap an uncertain hazard of antibody development sometime in the future for a very definite hazard from unheated factor 8 in the present. On balance, I think Alpha Therapeutics have made a reasonable case for their modified product. Once again, one is struck by the contrast between this submission and one or two others that you have sent me. He then goes on the following page to talk about the idea of a scientific meeting taking place. But that, sir, is Dr. Thomas's view. And it appears that this consultation with Dr. Thomas took the place of a formal referral to the Committee on the Safety of Medicines. The UK product licence for heat-treated Prophylact was issued on the 19th of February 1995, with conditions including a requirement to adhere to the batch release process. The references are MHRA 00333888_14 and 15. In a letter dated the 10th of April 1985, Alpha UK explained that it would continue to supply the product on a named patient basis until the labelling and packaging had been approved and was available. That references the same stem _008. If we could have on screen, please, MHRA 0033388_006. We could have page 4 of that document, please. This is the proposed label for the heat-treated product as part of the discussions that went on between the DHSS and the company. We can see under the caution, it says this product is prepared from human plasma of donors who have been individually tested at each donation and found non-reactive to hepatitis B surface antigen by approved test. However, it is recognised that presently available methods are not sensitive enough to detect all units of potentially infectious plasma. That's the draft label. A draft data sheet as of the 13th of March 1985 is at MHRA 033388_007. I'll try that again. MHRA 0033388_007. Thank you. This is I said data sheet, so sorry, actually, this is a package insert. Underneath the description, we can see that the same warning is given about hepatitis. And then the third paragraph down, you can see that it says, the process used in the manufacture of Prophylact heat-treated includes a step designed to reduce the risk of transmission of hepatitis, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, and infection by other viruses. However, no method has been shown to be totally ineffective, to be shown to be totally effective in removing hepatitis, AIDS, or other viral infectivity from antihemophilic factor human. So I note that the reference to the step being taken to reduce hepatitis and AIDS is one that the DHSS picked up upon and asked to be changed. In later versions of this document, it is changed. There follows a section on clinical pharmacology. I'm not going to take you through it, sir. I think it can be fairly summarised as saying that it describes the newly recognised retrovirus that had been implicated as a possible causative agent of AIDS, and it goes through how that has been tested in Prophylact, and the chimpanzee studies and the viral load studies that have been conducted. If we could go over onto the next page, please. In the warning section, a bit further down, again we have a warning about hepatitis. in similar terms to the one that we've looked at before. And on AIDS, the warning section says, and I quote, "The causal factors of acquired immune deficiency syndrome have not been fully defined. However, HDLV3/LAV virus has been implicated as a possible agent of the disease. It is not presently known if other transmissible agents are," we could go over to the next page, involved. Alpha uses screening procedures to eliminate high-risk plasma donors and a heat treatment step in the manufacturing process to reduce the risk of transmitting AIDS. However, despite the careful selection of donors, it may be possible that the AIDS causative agents may still be present in and be transmitting through this product. In November, we will come back to the steps that are taken. Thank you. If we could take that down, please, Shumik. So those are some of the documents that were provided with the application to the UK authorities for the product license and the correspondence that followed it. An internal alpha document, which is a UK inventory, or inventory even, dated the 31st of August 1985, records that the company had 2.5 million units of heat-treated Prophylact at the time. The same inventory notes that the company had about 735,000 units of what was termed standard concentrate, which was presumably non-heat treated. But the fact that those units were present doesn't mean that they were actually being sold at that time, nor indeed that any customers would have been willing to buy them. And that is August 1985, the reference being CGRA 40565.
Well, it also means they had neither been, had they been junked nor returned.
No, they were
and it amounted to roughly 20-25% of the, from the figures you've given me, of the available stock.
Yes, but what that stock was available for is isn't expressed in the document. Turning to market share, a letter dated the 18th of March 1986 shows the approach that Alpha was taking to marketing heat-treated Prophylact at that time. NHBT 0096602_005, please. This is sent to Mr. Rhodes of the Northwestern Regional Health Authority, and it's thanking him for an inquiry of the 12th of March. It refers to two alternative preparations that are available. The first being Prophylact heat-treated wet method, and this is the product that we have been talking about so far. It talks about the presentation of the heat treatment step. Then, in terms of virus inactivation data, it says this, and I quote, "A study in conjunction with the Centre for Disease Control in Atlanta was performed where the product was deliberately spiked with live HDLV3 virus. The number of logs of HDLV virus and other viral markers was assayed before and after heat treatment. A full report of this data, which formed part of our product license application to the DHSS, is attached, so information provided on that study. Hepatitis. A clinical study was undertaken in the UK to determine the effect of this unique heat treatment step on transmission of all viruses, but particularly non-A, non-B virus. The preliminary results of this study were contained in a letter to the Lancet, copy attached. We will come on to that letter in a second. A full report with patient data collated up to the 1st of February 1986 is available from clinical trial coordinator Dr. Kernoff. Underlined is the following comment, and I quote, "The results..."
No, we're not there yet.
There we are.
Thank you.
The results show significant reductions in the incidence of post-transfusion NA and B hepatitis in virgin haemophiliacs. To date, this is the only product that has published evidence to substantiate a claim to a significantly reduced incidence of post-transfusion NA and B hepatitis. Then it says, further safeguards, product imported into the UK is produced exclusively from plasma donors who are both negative for HDLV3 antibody and also less than twice the upper limit of normal for ALT. The price is stated to be 16 pence per international unit. I stress that this letter is the 18th of March 1986, so we've progressed about a year in time where those additional donor screening tests have been taken. But the importance is the claim that the product has been shown to make significant reductions in NA and B hepatitis as well as inactivating AIDS. Before I turn to the Lancet article, and because we have the document on the screen, we will see that underneath the description of the Prophylact HT that we have been talking about, there was also a dry heat treated method that was available. I won't go into details, as so far as I'm aware, this was not a product that was widely used in the UK. There is a data sheet at BPLL 302217, but I don't think so that I need to take you to it. But that product was being at least referred to in a letter to an interested person, and it seems to have been a response, which is why, even though available on a named patient basis, this information could be provided. The Lancet Letter, which is about the suspension-heated Prophylact, is at RLIT 40186. If we could have that on screen, please, Shumik. The letter is signed by Drs. Kernoff and Miller of the Royal Free, Dr. Savage of St Thomas's, Dr. Makin of Middlesex Hospital, and Drs. Dewar and Preston of the Royal Hallamshire in Sheffield. And thanks is also given, if we could just go above the signatures, to Dr. Aronstam, Professor Minucci, Dr. Mitchell, Dr. Robbins, and Dr. Winter for contributing patients to the study. The letter from the 28th of September 1985 states this: Sir, after a first exposure to large donor pool unheated factor VIII concentrates of either commercial or volunteer origin, acute non-A non-B hepatitis is a virtual certainty, implying the invariable contamination of these products. Although heat treatment probably eliminates the risk of HDLV3 transmission, the most commonly used heating process, heating in the lyophilized state, dry heating, seems to have little or no effect in reducing the risk of NA and B hepatitis. Such infections may have serious long-term consequences. Preliminary results from a prospective multi-center clinical study indicate that heat treating factor VIII concentrate before final lyophilization, wet heating, is more effective in reducing the risk of post-transfusion NA and B. The product used in this study, Prophylact Heat Treated, Alpha Therapeutics UK, is prepared from American commercial plasma pools. I note this for your note, 5,000 to 32,000 donors per batch. The study protocol is similar to that previously described. I won't go through those details there, sir. But the letter goes on to describe 18 patients who had been admitted to the study and have been followed up for 42 weeks. All were treated in England apart from one Italian. 9 different batches of Prophylact have been used. The authors say this, and I quote, none of the patients, about halfway through the second paragraph, none of the patients has shown serological evidence of acute infection with hepatitis virus A or B, cytomegalovirus, or Epstein-Barr virus, and all have remained seronegative for anti-HDLV3. However, acute NANB has developed in 4. All 4 were treated with the same batch of Prophylact, and they were the only patients of the 18 to have received this batch. In none of these patients was the hepatitis symptomatic. Incubation periods were 2, 2, 4, and 8 weeks, respectively. Possible reasons for the apparent persisting infectivity of this single batch are being examined. At this stage of the study, however, the absence of NANB hepatitis after administration of other batches suggests that the product carries a lesser overall risk of NANBH transmission than either unheated or dry-heated concentrates. As I say, so that is September 1985 in the Lancet. While the publication came in September 1985, there is considerable evidence that the results were being discussed among haemophilia clinicians before that date, and that as a result, Prophylact had quickly established a strong market position among the heat-treated products, despite selling at a price, 14 pence, that may have been higher than some of its competitors. A Cutter report from January 1985 noted that Dr. Wensley in Manchester had switched to Prophylact heat-treated and appeared, and I quote, to believe in the wet heat treatment process, though he was reserving judgment until liver function studies were known. Reference to that is BAYP 5024_070. In March 1985, in Newcastle, Dr. Jones wrote to his pharmacy department that, and I quote, overall, the best product presently available for clinical use is probably the alpha one, Prophylact. This is the only product in which heating of wet material occurs, and preliminary results of a clinical trial being mounted by the company suggest that it is free of non-A, non-B hepatitis, as well as AIDS. That reference is TYWE 5014. On the 12th of April 1985, Professor Bloom in Cardiff wrote to his chief pharmacist, and if we could perhaps have this on screen, it's CVHB 602_028. Dr. Bloom wrote that he was, and this letter concerns ordering factor 8. He says, he complains about the Co-8 product and then says, and I quote, in addition, the heat treatment process is not as effective as that applied by Alpha to Prophylact HT. I appreciate that the latter is a 2 pence a unit more expensive, but even so, I think that clinical considerations must be the overriding factor, and I therefore think that we should restrict our factor 8 orders to Prophylact HT until such time as one of the other manufacturers can compete. I hope that you will find this course of action acceptable. I note here, sir, that by October 1985, this preference was reflected in the treatment guidelines at the Cardiff Centre, which can be found at WITN 4029003. Prophylact HT was seen as the second safest product after 8Y, the BPL product. A Cutter memorandum of the 20th of May 1985 recorded that Dr. Savage had presented his own Prophylact HT trial results, and that they supported what was described as Alpha's claim that Prophylact HT was free from non-A, non-B hepatitis. His results were said to support those of Dr. Kernoff and Dr. Wensley. And according to the Cutter memo, some haemophilia directors were now saying, and I quote, that it was unethical to use anything but Prophylact HT, especially on virgin haemophiliacs and children. References BAYP 5024_230. further cutter memo from September 1985 reports that various other directors, including Dr. Preston, have reached a similar view, although Dr. Mitchell in Derby dissented after one of her patients seemed to develop NA and B hepatitis, having used Prophylact. That reference is BAYP 607_113. The preference for Prophylact HT amongst clinicians such as Dr. Jones, Dr. Kernoff, Dr. Savage and Professor Bloom continued into 1986. If we could have on the screen, please, BAYP 608_059. This is another cutter memorandum in which it's recorded. This is 16th of January 1986. I've been told by Dr. Peter Jones that Newcastle are now using only alpha material. His reasons were explained as follows. With the increased number of haemophiliacs developing AIDS or pre-AIDS, he must give them the safest known material available. He mentioned the work of P. Kernoff et al., attached, and I challenged him on the grossly over-presumptive interpretation of the data that alpha material is NA-NB safe. He agreed that the results were not conclusive in any way, but said that Alpha were the only company with clinical data that he had seen which shows any indication of success in eradicating NA-NB transmission in factor VIII concentrates. Dr. Jones will express his opinions at the AIDS meeting in February. He will meet with support from 3 other major centres who also only use alpha material: Sheffield, the Royal Free, and Cardiff. The author of the memo goes on to describe the major blow of losing Newcastle. So we can see, sir, a march is being stolen by Prophylact HT in the heat-treated product market. An application was made to vary the license and change the labelling in November 1986, and it was seemingly approved on the 15th of January 1987. The references are MHRA 003337 _010 and same stem _011 and the same stem _012. We can see some of the labelling that was being used at the time. If we could have on screen, please, MHRA 003337 _014. As part of the application, the company provided the copies of the vials that were being, copies of the packaging that was being used at the time. And we can see that this is used on the small vial. The warning says this product is prepared from large pools of human plasma which may contain the causative agents of non-A, non-B hepatitis, hepatitis B, and other viral diseases. See package insert. Each unit of plasma has been tested and found non-reactive for HB surface antigen, HDLV3 antibody by FDA-approved tests. So that's the small vial. If we look now at MHRA 003337 _016, this is the large vial concentrate. The warning is different. It says, this product is prepared from human plasma of donors that have been individually tested at each donation and found non-reactive for hepatitis B surface antigen by FDA-required test. However, it is recognised that methods presently available are not sensitive enough to detect all units of potentially infectious plasma, and the risk of transmitting hepatitis is still present. A different warning depending on the size of a product that you are providing. These are the the packets that are to be replaced, and we can see the proposed text for labels and cartons at MHRA 00333387_017. And that text contains no warning on it, although it does refer the reader to the package insert. And we'll come on to that in a second. The application, there was a further application on the 30th of July 1987, which was for a rationalisation and update of the text, including incorporation of new information about non-A, non-B hepatitis. But it's at MHRA 003389_049. And the data sheet helpfully sets out the present text and the proposed text. And if we could have that on screen, please, at MHRA 003389_050. If we could go to page 2, please. We can see on the left-hand side, in the left-hand column, is the present text as of July 1987, and the proposed text is on the right-hand side. If we could go, please, to page 3 in the section on warnings. I should say, sir, that the comparison is slightly confused by the fact that some of the text in the proposed warnings is placed elsewhere in the package insert. So it's not the fact that it's not present next door to the existing wording doesn't mean that it has somehow been cut. If we look at the present text, it states this, and I quote from the left-hand column: "This product is prepared from pooled units of human plasma which have been individually tested and found non-reactive for hepatitis B surface antigen, an antibody to human T lymphotropic virus type 3, HDLV3. Other screening procedures are used to eliminate high-risk plasma donors, and a heat treatment step in the manufacturing process is designed to reduce the risk of transmitting viral infection." I note, so that is the request that the DHSS have made, and that has been followed. The proposed text says, again, that the product is prepared from pooled units of human plasma, which have been individually tested and found non-reactive for hepatitis B surface antigen, an antibody to human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. The plasma used in the preparation of this product has been screened for alanine aminotransferase, ALT levels, in an effort to reduce the risk of transmission of non-A, non-B hepatitis. Each unit used in the manufacture of this product has been found to have an ALT level less than 2 times the upper limit of normal for the test. Other screening procedures are used to eliminate high-risk plasma donors, and a heat treatment step in the manufacturing process is designed to reduce the risk of transmitting viral infection. If we could go over to the next page, please. Some detail is given about the testing of the product with spiked HIV and the reduction of 3.25 logs of HIV and about the chimpanzee studies. And although we can see that there is no equivalent text in the left-hand column, that material was actually contained a little earlier in the old version of the document, so it's not new. If we go down to the third paragraph, this is new. The incidence of post-infusion non-A, non-B hepatitis in patients receiving a first exposure to unheated factor VIII concentrates approaches 100%. In contrast, Prophylact heat-treated has been shown to be effective in reducing the risk of transmission of non-A, non-B hepatitis. Various references are given to literature in support of that. In bold, and I quote, However, testing methods presently available are not sensitive enough to detect all units of potentially infectious plasma, and treatment methods have not been shown to be totally effective in eliminating viral infectivity from this product. Despite all precautions taken by the manufacturer, it cannot be assumed that this product is totally free of HIV or hepatitis virus. As with all drugs, the risk associated with use must be weighed against the benefits of therapy. So, sir, the warning against hepatitis infection and AIDS infection remains, or HIV infection remains. Among the new information about NA&B infection that was provided with this product application was a paper by Drs. Kernov, Savage, and others, which is worth looking at for a number of reasons, and it's NHBT 0042403, tab 76. You will recall, sir, that the letter to the Lancet gave evidence in September 1985 of a study of 18 patients. And this paper in the British Journal of Haematology, 1987, volume 67, pages 207 to 211, takes that study forward. I'll try again, NHBT 0042403. Thank you. The study is entitled Reduced Risk of Non-A, Non-B Hepatitis After a First Exposure to Wet Heated Factor VIII Concentrate. The summary states this, and I quote, "The risk of post-infusion non-A, non-B hepatitis in patients receiving a first exposure to unheated or conventionally dry-heated Factor VIII concentrates approaches 100%, implying invariable contamination of these products. Amongst 18 patients who received a first treatment with a wet heated commercial concentrate, 5, 28%, developed asymptomatic NA&B, suggesting a more efficient inactivation of NA&B agents by this process. 2 of 9, 22%, of the batches of concentrate used in the study were implicated in NA&B transmissions. One of these 2 batches, responsible for NA&B in 4 patients, had been prepared from a plasma pool containing an unusually large proportion of donations with high alanine aminotransferase, ALT, levels. A resulting high level of viral contamination in this batch may have been sufficient to override the effects of the sterilization process. All patients remained anti-HIV seronegative at 17 to 28 months of follow-up." So, sir, I note that there is one additional patient from the Lancet letter in September 1985 who has now been identified as having been infected by NA&B, but it is still 5 of 18 patients as opposed to the usual 100% of patients. If we could just go down on that page to the patients and methods section. States that the patients were admitted to the study between September 1984 and August 1985 and followed for at least 40 weeks. If we could go over to the next page, please. The second paragraph down. This refers to the product used. It says, and I quote, "Factor VIII concentrate was bought from Alpha Therapeutics UK Limited and had been manufactured from US-derived commercial plasma pools obtained from approximately 5,000 to 32,000 donations, none of which had been screened for ALT or anti-HIV. 9 different batches of concentrates were used." I pause there, sir, to note again that figure of 5,000 to 32,000 donors is given. Because the patients were selected between September 1984 and August 1985, that predates the screening of the donor pools with ALT testing and HIV testing, which, as we've seen from the documents we've been looking at, came in a little later. We turn to the results column. it talks about the 5 patients, 28%, who developed acute NAMB. And then it goes on to say that in 3 of the 5 patients who developed hepatitis, transaminase abnormalities resolved within the 40-week follow-up period. In the other 2, abnormalities persisted beyond 40 weeks, indicating the development of chronic hepatitis. 2 additional patients, patients 3 and patient 5, developed mild transient ALT abnormalities, which did not fulfill the criteria for the diagnosis of hepatitis. If we go over, we just hit the bottom of that page, it says 2 of the 9 batches of concentrate, 22%, were implicated. Go over to the next page underneath the diagrams. Is that page 3? Sorry, that's still page 2. 2 of the 9 batches of concentrates were, we go to the text just beneath these diagrams. 2 of the 9 batches of concentrates were implicated in transmission of NAMB. One of these batches, batch D, caused hepatitis in all 4 recipients, suggesting a batch-related rather than a process-related problem. And we'll pick up what happened with batch D shortly. We could go over, please, to the final page, the penultimate page, page 4. In the discussion section, if we pick it up about halfway down the left-hand column, commercial factor 8 concentrates. The authors write, quotes, commercial factor 8 concentrates subjected to dry heating at 60 degrees Celsius for 30 to 72 hours have been found to transmit non-A, non-B to 84 to 100% of recipients, papers are cited. Attack rates which are similar to those associated with unheated concentrates, whether derived from commercial or volunteer plasma. The lower transmission rate found in this study suggests that the method used to prepare the concentrate, which included heating at 60 degrees centigrade for 20 hours while the material was in a slurry with N-heptane, was more effective than conventional dry heating and resulted in a lesser degree of viral contamination of the final product. This conclusion is reinforced by the course of patient 2, whose lack of evidence of NAMB during the first 11 months of follow-up is clearly unlikely to be attributable to host resistance factors. Reduced transmission rates have been found by other investigators using both the same and another wet-heated concentrate, and references are given to other texts. We could go over to the next column, please, and the first full paragraph in, starting with risk. This goes back to batch D, the batch that gave rise to 4 of the infections. The risk of non-A, non-B hepatitis by factor 8 concentrate depends not only on the efficiency of any sterilization process, but also on characteristics of the source plasma. In the absence of any reliable serological markers for NANB hepatitis, interest in donor screening as a means of reducing viral contamination of concentrates has centered on the possibility of using surrogate tests, including anti-hepatitis B core antigen and ALT. There is good evidence that ALT screening, in particular, is likely to result in a reduced risk of NANBH in non-pooled products. And plasma used as source material for US-derived commercial clotting factor concentrates is now invariably derived from ALT-screened donors. This was not the case in 1984 to 1985, when the concentrate used in the present study was manufactured. An examination of the product history of one of our 2 implicated batches, batch D, suggested that its propensity to cause non-A, non-B hepatitis might have been at least partially related to an unusually high level of NANB viral contamination in the plasma pool from which it was derived. The plasma used to prepare batch D was collected in the USA in early 1985, and some was provided by independent contract plasma suppliers. In 1985, the West German health authorities ruled that all plasma products destined for use in that country should be derived from donor plasmas which have been individually screened for elevated ALT levels. This was not, and still is not, a requirement in the UK. Without the knowledge of the manufacturers, one of their contract suppliers diverted plasma which had failed to meet the German requirements, and this was used to prepare batch D. The source plasma pool is now known to have contained a much higher than usual proportion of high ALT plasma, and it seems possible that this resulted in a high level of viral contamination, which was sufficient to override the effects of the sterilization process. The asymptomatic course of the patients who developed NANBH may be indicative of a partial neutralization of NANB agents, since hepatitis associated with unheated commercial concentrates is usually symptomatic. All concentrates now manufactured by the company are derived from plasma donations which have ALT levels less than twice the upper limit of normal and have been screened for anti-HIV. Whether or not such screening will eliminate or reduce the risk of post-infusion NANBH can only be assessed by a second clinical study, which is currently in process. A couple of things to pick up from that, sir. First is the general point made that there has been some success in inactivating NANB hepatitis by use of Prophylact HT methods, although there have been some instances where it has still been transmitted. The second point relating specifically to batch D is the fact that the plasma was supplied under contract to Alpha rather than from one of Alpha's own plasmapheresis centres. And in this instance, it seems that the plasma for batch D had failed the test put in place by the West German authority relating to ALT levels and had, unknown to Alpha, been included within its manufacturing process for factor VIII for elsewhere in the world. A third point, just on that second point, sir, you may recall that when we were looking at Highland, there was some reference in Highland, in an internal document from Highland Travenol that said that they never used any batch which failed the ALT tests in any other product, unlike some of their competitors. And it may be that that is a reference to this. A third point for your consideration, sir, is that the ALT tests that the American companies carried out were carried out in response to a requirement made by the West German licensing authorities. Now, West Germany may have been a bigger market for blood products from the UK, but it shows that American companies were responsive in their practices to requirements that were placed on products by European regulators, not just by American regulators. Moving on to from this document, if we could take it off the screen. In May 1988, the United Kingdom Haemophilia Centre Directors Organisation issued some product recommendations, which included Prophylact HT as the third choice of product behind BPL's 8Y and the Behringwerk product, Hemate P, which was by that stage available in the UK. The reference is NHBT 5037_014. And at a meeting of the Haemophilia Reference Centre Directors in February 1989, Dr. Bloom noted that Prophylact HT have the largest share in the commercial market. That references HCDO 40432. The emphasis is on the commercial market because obviously significant amounts of product were being produced by NHS sources at that time as well. By the 30th of January 1990, Professor Bloom was seeking to prevent the use of Prophylact HT in Cardiff because he had adequate supplies of 8Y and of Hemate P. The reference is CVHB 602_071. I won't bring it up. What Professor Bloom wrote there was that, and I quote, "The alpha product Prophylact, which was our previous commercial choice, does sometimes transmit hepatitis, and we have only used this on previously exposed patients. I do not like having it in the storage refrigerator in case it is used by junior staff after hours. However, I appreciate that it is too expensive to destroy unless you feel the budget could meet this." So we can see from those documents that Prophylact holds its position as the market leader into the late 1980s, but it is being seen as a product which does still carry a non-A, non-B risk, unlike 8Y and it seems Hemate P as well, or at least a greater risk from those products. And Prophylact itself sought in October 1989 to vary its license to allow for a new product, which was a solvent detergent product, Prophylact SD. So a new generation of products replacing the old heat-treated version. That variation was approved in March 1990. The references are MHRA 003336_023, same stem _021, and the CSMB report from Dr. Rockblatt and Mrs. Sylvester is at MHRA 0034913_003. I don't think so that I need to take you to any of those documents or indeed to the data sheet. Safe to know that this application is being considered from October 1989 until March 1990. And that is of some relevance to the next section that I'm going to come to, sir, which is about a discussion which was taking place at roughly that time about the possibility of suspending the license for heat-treated Prophylact because of concerns about the manufacturing site at which it was produced. I don't know, sir, if you would like me to start on that now or whether you would prefer a break before we turn.
Well, we'll have quite a lot to go through there, I suspect. So shall we take a break now and come back at 20 to 4? 20 to 4.